Arcane is a story of opposites. Any thematic messaging the show tries to drill into us kind of contradicts itself, but that only leads to the unmatched complexity found within the show. No one is perfect, no one is rigid, the world is ever evolving. Christian Link said that every character will be their opposite, but that's not something we haven't seen in Season 1. Take the originator of this quote, Silko. Characterized and fueled by his vision of Zaun directly injecting shimmer into his eyes to exemplify him strengthening his initiative to guide Zaun, Silko was a major threat in Act 1. Manipulating the scene from the shadows, Silko came out with probably a decade of prep time to eclipse Vander's leadership and guide Zaun into a new era. To bring upon the independent Zaun is what convinced Savika's loyalty. He scorned Vander for bending a knee to the enforcers and protecting the meaningless lives of the few while the general populace struggles. To stop at nothing to achieve his dreams, to do whatever it takes was ingrained into him after his revelation in the river. Yet he cracks as well seeing a sniveling girl abandoned by her sister. He struggled to snuff out his future downfall and hesitates to the surprise of his henchmen. Silko's vision wavers here, as the family-first mindset of Vander plants seeds in his psyche as he's unable to kill the girl so reminiscent of his past. This is the clearest example of character confliction, as Silko's love for Jinx only grows with time. At first, nurturing Jinx went adjacent to his dream, as sending her on missions helped further his goals. But now he relies on Jinx too much, his daughter the one giving him the strength of vision. When speaking with Jayce, he gets an offer of independence in exchange for Jinx, which completely shatters him. He laments to Vander, saying how Vander was right and he could not give up his daughter for the dream he spent a lifetime craving, only to realize what's truly important to him, and loses sight of his only edge above everyone else, his willingness to do anything. Another blatant example of this is Marcus. Starting out the series like a hard-ass, justice-eyed enforcer, he wanted to do anything to keep the plague of the Undercity in check away from his beloved Piltover. And he made one deal with a complete nobody to get intel on the culprits and got Vander and Grayson in a vulnerable position to be finished off quickly. Instated as the new sheriff, Marcus was forced to eat Silko's ass as he covered up his involvement in Zaun's crime syndicate. It's kinda funny, both Marcus and Silko were dead set on a singular goal whose daughter both led to their downfall. Marcus had his daughter threatened at every turn and was forced to compromise his morals pushing the line until it ultimately costed him his life. In his last moments, gun pointed at Caitlyn, he still could not bring himself to shoot. She was who he wanted to be, an underdog enforcer snuffing out the Undercity's crimes. Nor could he imagine taking someone else's daughter. But letting Caitlyn across the bridge would ruin everything for Silko and surely cost his own daughter's safety. If only there was another way, and Jinx cleared that third path for him. Children always seem to quite literally change their parents in Arcane. Look at Mbessa, her no-nonsense attitude and pragmatic logical flow. There are certain decisions she has been familiar with to survive in the battlefields of Noxus, wisdom only learned through tribulation. Her cold heart tempered by the icy red cliffs, her demeanor is only overshadowed by her capability. But watching her daughter's disappointment in her, or the gleam in her hopeful eyes, it quite literally breaks her. It got to the point where she sent Mel away so she could make the necessary cruel decisions without getting shamed. And after decades, she has no choice but to meet with her daughter again after her son has been killed. Mel is the favorite child, seeing how her brother was not willing to take the path of violence, while Mel grasps its possibility and weight. But Mel's position in Piltover gives her the reason to visit, to acquire the premier technology of her time. After pressuring Jayce to build the first Hextech weapon, Mel rushes into her room to berate her intrusive will and toying with her pet project. And yet, the cold and calculating Mbessa breaks down, letting it all on her daughter about the love behind all her actions. Even for a Noxian warlord, it seems that it's a constant in the Arcane world to have an undoing daughter. With Mel at the least incapacitated in the next season, Mbessa loses that angel on her shoulder, the weight holding her back from going full general mode. It's not because of Mel Mbessa fully gives into her dark and greedy desires, it's the lack of Mel. But for Vander, it's a different story. Vander's character has been constant, retaining peace at all costs. Yes, he could fight for a better future for his daughters. Yes, he could kill all the enforcers in the last drop for their safety. Yes, he can also give himself up. There is a difference between the pacifist and the peacekeeper. Vander is a pacifist, but he ingrained the peacekeeper in the Vi. Vander refuses to fight, but Vi is more than willing to. But Vander's entire character arc barely wavers, refusing to fight Silko or topside even with Shimmer. The losses aren't worth it, and he can't imagine the possibility of his family and friends dying because of his decision to wage war. The reason why Vander doesn't change is because he already is the opposite. We haven't seen the violent, ambitious man who led the Undercity onto the bridge. We only saw the man afterward, after gaining a family. Just kidding. Vander changes one last time, after the monkey bomb, after Silko's factory is in complete shambles. With his two sons killed and Silko's crew closing in, Vander picks up the knuckle dusters and steps into the fray. He gives into the hound of the underworld and kills sons and brothers of Zaun, some of which were literal children. Even though in the end, Vander still chose to protect his daughter, this action is narratively significant for him. Silko directly stating that he knew Vander still had it in him was reinforcing the fact that when pushed to the wall with his family in danger, Vander accepts some losses to protect the family. Violence might be a last resort, but it still is a resort. This is a similar character archetype for Singed, whose character arc has also completed in the past. As of now, he's a cold, unfeeling scientist who has no moral qualms for any research that can allow him to prolong life. We know two things about him, that he once had a daughter and parted ways with Heimerdinger to pursue scientific progress over public image. Given that his daughter is not existent anymore and all of Singe's experiments have been to cure death, it's easy to piece together what happened. Another case of a daughter sending the parent off the deep end. And yet, because of daughters, Singe grows a moral compass as well. The only time we see him show care for another was putting Silko under at the risk of his own life, just so he can spare Silko from watching the torturous surgery that Jinx would undergo. He had negative reason to do this other than empathy, understanding the pain of watching your own daughter's anguish. So on one end, a daughter made Singe lose all his morality, and on another end, a different daughter helped bring it back. Now, for an adult without any children, it makes Heimerdinger contradictory from the values of Piltover. Progress is ensuring a better world for your children, and the fleetingness of life is what fuels scientific pursuit. Just look at Victor. But in isolation, without a frame of reference for passing on that torch, the everlasting Heimerdinger seemingly opposes progress. His retrospective values halt Piltover's development, which is funny considering he was one of the founders. Again, Heimerdinger is projected as seeing far into the past and far into the future. Yet, Heimerdinger seems to enjoy himself in the present, giving full attention to the opera while everyone else are doing politics plays for the future. Again, Heimerdinger in his last speech was looking at Piltover with its present dangers at the current moment, while Jayce called him out for his history of decisions and bleak future with him at the helm. Heimerdinger has a unique relationship with the past, present, and future, and a lot of his detachments to human life lie where he lives in the present when everyone else is in the future, or being in the past when people are at the present, and looking into the future when people look at the past. This disconnect is a direct result of his immortality shifting his frame of reference and isolates him from relating with his peers. Now moving on to daughters, I want to talk about the struggles with Vi between protecting and peacekeeping. These two natures are inherent to her personal ideology. Throughout the series, Vi has to pick between the two, whether that be fighting Silko on her own to protect everyone else, choosing to help Jinx instead of escorting the Hex Gem, rushing into the Undercity to attack Silko's operations to get Jinx back. It's only when Vi gets the choice to sacrifice herself that both of her interests collide and she can resolve both parts of peacekeeping and protecting. But in most cases, especially under the pretense of war, Vi has to choose drastic options such as becoming an enforcer to bring peace to the city, if that means putting Jinx down. Or on the other hand, bonding with Jinx and maintaining the aura of war. A key defining feature of Vi directly shown to us is that she has a good heart. Vander directly told us that, but let's think about that statement. Vi isn't as compassionate as Caitlyn, idealized as Jayce, pure as Victor, or non-violent as Vander. But Vander saw a certain gem inside Vi, that is familial bonds. For her sister, Vi would quite literally do anything for her, just like how Vander kept all the Undercity united as a large family taking care of each other's needs. And so, Vi goes on dangerous missions to provide for the Undercity, sacrificing herself for the greater good and trudging on alone to do what she thinks is right. Having a good heart in Vander's eyes isn't about being literally good, but having the values to empathize and bear other people's struggles. That's why Vi protects, so others don't have to feel pain. That's why Vi wants peace, so no one else has to experience what she went through. To certain ends, whether that be stopping Silko or protecting Jinx, Vi is willing to get down and dirty to work with anyone to achieve those ends. Working with enforcers and counselors, no other Zonite would be caught dead in that position. But Vi also harbors some loyalty to those members, as she could easily escape from Caitlyn the moment she got released, or pummel Jayce in to steal better Hextech weapon. Despair is hard to come by for Vi, as long as there's something she could do to make the situation slightly better. But when shoved in that dark corner, pushed to the brink, Vi fucks herself up. No longer protector, no longer peacekeeping, no longer good-hearted. In prison, in the fight ring, Vi, out of options, just wants pain. She punishes herself for her failure of consoling Powder, of protecting Jinx, of disappointing Caitlyn. Vi is probably the only person that beats herself up like that, picking fights with prison guards, prisoners, Civica, and Fight Club people in the bid to repent, well, more so punish for her mistakes. We saw what Jayce and Victor would do in deep pits of regret. Jinx just gets more trauma. Silko overcomes. Ekko builds. Heimerdinger goes to Zon in the midlife crisis. Caitlyn cries in the shower. Mel whines to her mom. But Vi shoves all her thoughts aside to mindlessly fight and get a beating. Honestly, similar to Vander, who after war lives on in shame and sacrifices image and influence to preserve peace. These two are just gluttons for punishment, and the hopeless Vi is when she casts away all her ideals and jumps headfirst into a pit of darkness without purpose. Speaking of dark places, let's talk about Caitlyn. She stayed relatively constant in part 1. Her shifting point is definitely when her mom is getting killed and when she loses all that compassion and sense of justice. But that doesn't mean Caitlyn lacks any opposite qualities throughout season 1. Her entire status as a Kiraman is her opposite, a title she tries to smash to do ground level work she believes matters. It's kind of amazing. From her skyscraper view mansion, she was able to piece together the entire underground crime syndicate Marcus was actively trying to cover up. So deductively talented, but socially stupid, accidentally making passive-aggressive remarks that piss off Vi. Then again, her innocence and idealism convince Ekko to side with Piltover and return the Hex Gem. But still, a majority of Caitlyn's complexity will be fleshed out in Season 2, so I will look forward to that. As for Jinx, her complete duality is probably only present in Season 1. Quite literally in two halves of Powder and Jinx, each part ripped into her to define themselves until Jinx took over in the end. A major theme of Season 2 is going to be the point of no return, with many characters giving the impression of being far too gone. Victor's immersion with magic, Jayce's complicitness in war, Jinx's true villainy in full display, Caitlyn's antagonism running rampant, Zaun and Piltover in full frontal conflict, and Jinx being only Jinx with no traces of Powder. Powder is incompetent while Jinx is a shining beacon of Zaun. All of post-time skip, Jinx was tearing apart at the seams as her opposites clashed within her. Similarly, Vi and Silko are basically having a custody battle for her. So I won't harp too much on Jinx because I made a 1 hour long analysis and I don't really have anything more to add. I do want to point out that Jinx is directly portrayed in the show as the opposite of every single character in some overt method, twisting the narrative to explicitly show how different Jinx is from the world around her and how it basically forced her to become Jinx to shape the world into something she would love. On the other side of Zaun, we have the other gleaming light, Ekko. Ekko's quite literally connectedness incarnate, being the last bastion of Vander's mutual thriving ideology with his own community helping people out. Under Silko's industrialization, Zaun basically became a capitalist dog-eat-dog world more than ever before. Especially with Shimmer running rampant, Ekko pushed for change in the hopeless atmosphere of Zaun by directly attacking Silko's crew no matter how many losses he incurs. Ekko's connectedness runs bone deep, willing to work with enforcers and even accidentally bonding with Jinx. But if you think about it, the Firelights are also quite isolated. Their formation was to hide away from the cruelties of the mainstream Zaun. Ekko also surveys the setting from the distance, staying far away but keeping his tabs on everything. Ekko simultaneously connected to every crevice of Zaun as his information network allows him to monitor all the happenings, while he is also a distant force passively changing the Undercity bit by bit. Again, Ekko boasts the mindset to live in the moment and not worry about past regrets and future failures as he instilled in Heimerdinger. But also, he fights against Silko for Zaun's future and paints a mural remembering people they lost, so Ekko doesn't entirely live in the present. When it comes to emotions versus logic, Ekko is wonderfully contradictory, as the passion of the moment fuels his planning and the subjective goodness of his goals will bring about future happiness. Victor also wants to do goodness with his main passions of designing Hex Tech for new functionality. You know, the Hex Core is very representative of Victor himself. Immense potential with the ability to adapt. Victor is a square peg in the gold-plated hole that is Piltover, and his entire identity has been to adapt to Piltover standards. But unlike the freeform Arcane, Victor is a Zaunite. Victor is the ugly duckling compared to his surroundings, getting passively aggressively ignored by Mel in conversations, has to deal with Heimerdinger's macroaggressions, and has front row seats to Jayce's racism. Victor can't even fit into society with his limp constantly reminding him of his inferiority. It's amazing Victor doesn't think twice about his disadvantages in life, however, doing everything he can in spite of his identity. But those weaknesses still weigh on him, with his illness manifesting the problems that Topside doesn't have to deal with his premier hope of survival spat on by Heimerdinger, the literal representation of Piltover. Victor sees it to return to his roots to fix his problems at the start. Victor only finds solace in Singe, both sharing the mindset to do anything. Jayce is burdened with public opinion, and Heimerdinger is way too detached from the fleeting nature of life. But Singe understands death at every corner just like Victor and gives him Shimmer, representative of the inner strength of all Zaunites that Victor has been actively repressing to blend into Piltover. So Victor accepts the deal, and it works. His scientific advancements rival that of Jayce. He conquered the limp that was his main defining feature. But something is always tainted with Zaunite, purple stains encroaching on his flesh. So too must he hide away those actions, discoveries, and successes. Now, Jayce's conflicts are entirely external. Constantly, Jayce is in the tug-of-war of influences trying to sway his potential towards a certain direction. At every step, Jayce seemingly has two angels on his shoulder telling him to do this to achieve progress. Unfortunately, Jayce is incompetent and makes each situation a complete disaster. But for Jayce, he is always caught between two wildly different policies and forced to choose, until at the end of Season 1, he goes on his own path to cuss out the entire council and make a back alley peace deal as a last resort. And that was the best thing he's done for Piltover this whole season. Oh, what could have been. Now, Mel has a pretty big contradiction. In episode 7, she convinces Jayce to make weapons, but then when her mom comes in episode 8, she 180s and wants peace. Yes, you can argue that peace and militarism could be the same, but the two are both inherently tied to her character. Mel has to deal with her Noxian warmongerer heritage and history. At the beginning of the time skip, she paints her mother country in a nostalgic light, and at the end she bathes it in gold, rejecting their ideology in favor of Piltover's progress. Mel romanticizes Noxus in the beginning, stating that being a Medarda defines her in Piltover as the richest individual in the city. Then in politics, stating how she personally knows war, which is why she advocated for initial Hextech weapon development. But as her mother comes into the fray, she realizes the true implications of other conquests and everlasting bloodthirst. Mel turns around on her beliefs because she juggles her Noxian pride separating herself from Piltover and the prospective Piltover mindset separating herself from her mother. It's symbolic how just as the city's gear for war with tensions at its highest, the ultimate warmongerer comes in and shatters her rose-tinted glasses and makes her come to terms to the cost of battle, just like Vander actually. And so Mel gives up her Noxian diamond as she votes for peace and places trust in the Undercity. Mel, in this scenario, goes against the conquest known in her culture as she gives up control to ensure a better future. The hopeful ideals she helped build into Piltover. Now last is Silko, whose opposite is acknowledging Jinx as the next hope of Zaun. But again, that arc is going to take place in Season 2, so let's just leave it off at that. Overall, the opposite and contradictory actions or mindsets of Arcane characters only help build their complexity and develop their viewpoints on the overall situation between Piltover and Zaun. Whether that be the wavering radicalism of Silko, the regretful circumstance of Marcus, the hesitant initiative of Mbessa, the divided love of Vander, the haunting fixation of Singe, the detached viewpoint of Heimerdinger, the conflict of ideology for Vi, the misplaced hyperfixations of Caitlyn, the warring identities of Jinx, the pulsating soul of Ekko, the unfortunate life of Victor, the paradigm of choice for Jayce, the cultural heritage of Mel, and the placement of loyalty for Silko, Arcane is amazing, and Season 2 will be sure to wow us. Thank you guys for watching, and one of my viewers, Sprout, made a really nice AMV that is better edited than all of my fucking shit. So you guys, if you're still here, watch that shit right now. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.